He spent 17 years catching criminals, and one unexpected love story turned him into a dog trainer. Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk, the podcast helping burned out pet parents who feel stuck with their pup finally let go of the guilt, learn to communicate, and build the bond you've always dreamed of through a partnership based approach that combines training, nutrition, and enrichment instead of chasing the quick fixes that don't actually work. I'm Em. And in this episode, you'll learn why curiosity fuels better training and how digging for the real why in behavior can completely change your results. How to spot red flags in dog training online so that you can find real support instead of more confusion, and what no one talks about with hard cases, including behavioral euthanasia and why asking for help sooner can save lives. Because sometimes the path that saves you is the one that you never planned to take. Josh doesn't know it yet. He's in for a little bit of surprise. We're going to talk about dog training, but what I really want to talk about is how you got into dog training. I don't think I've ever heard that story before. So tell us what brought you here today.
Goodness gracious. Never expected to get into dog training. Long career of 17 years in a completely separate field, and was happy and content. And then I met the woman of my dreams. And ever since I've met her, everything has changed dramatically and I have no control over it. And I'm just along for the ride at this point.
I think that's okay.
You didn't
That's okay.
think it would be a love story, did you? That surprised you. Curveball.
I mean, I knew that you had met Natalie and that had changed your life. So I kind of figured that had something to do with it, but I didn't know that was the whole reason. That's pretty awesome because you don't hear that kind of thing very often, honestly.
No, it's typically, I had dogs as a child and I really connected with dogs and dogs, but I've always loved dogs, but honestly, life sort of completely changed when you meet somebody who sees you and gives you the confidence to more or less manifest things that you didn't think were possible. So that's definitely our origin story.
That's very cool. Let's get into that a little bit. How did you meet Natalie?
I was a corporate investigator. So my job for 17 years was investigating organized crime and catching people stealing, both people coming into companies stealing as well as employees stealing. Led a long career in that, worked for several headquarters in different organizations. And I was hired for Natalie. In my interview process, I was sat down and they were very upfront with me and said, we're looking for someone to be able to match a particular district manager that we have who are burning through loss prevention leadership. She's very difficult to handle. She's a pistol. And through the interview process, they felt like I was a good match to be able to keep up with her because she was very much a freight train in her line of work. And if her business partners didn't keep up, or they were slouching, or they were lazy, or they were inept, or anything, she could smell it and they would tap. And so I guess you could say, hand selected to be her business partner, which is really strange. And then through the course of being her business partner, we fell in love and I left the organization and left the career. A lot of dog trainers entered the industry during the pandemic. It was just a time when I think everybody went, what now? It was like a global reset. Everybody got locked away and started thinking about their life and what they actually want to do and are they happy? And although I was really happy in my career and I worked really hard to be successful in that career and had a reputation, I took a hard look at maybe getting back into dog training, which is something that I had learned in the Marine Corps a long time ago. The first time that I learned to train dogs, I was stationed in the Marine Corps base in Hawaii, and I was hanging out with some Air Force friends at Camp Smith, and I saw a dog trainer training an officer's pit bull to protect the pickup truck. She was on base doing protection training. We were all sitting back and just watching her agitate this pit bull in a pickup truck. And so I struck up a conversation with her and asked if she would teach me. And she said, if you come out and you clean my kennels, I'll think about it. And so I spent my weekends going out across the island in Waimanalo. She had a dog training company called Aloha Dog Training. I can't find her. So if you're out there, reach out. I looked for her like everywhere and I can't find her anymore. But I cleaned her kennels for a very long time. She taught me to train dogs, and my graduation ceremony for training dogs to actually start working and training dogs with her was she found a feral dog in Waimanalo that was eating chickens. And she said, if you can teach this dog not to eat chickens and we can get it fostered out, then I'll have you come out and just start training my dogs as opposed to cleaning my kennels. So I worked that dog for the better part of 6 weeks and we got it to stop eating chickens, and we adopted it out to an affluent family. And that's how I learned to train dogs. So when I got out of training dogs or got out of the Marine Corps, I started training dogs for probably a year and a half, just a little bit of behavior work, a lot of compulsion stuff. And two people foot the bill on dogs that I was owed money with, and I missed rent. And so I ran into a company and applied that day because I was missing rent. And that's what started my 17 years in loss prevention. So when I took a hard look at what I want to do for the rest of my life, I realized that dog training was something that I really wanted to get into. And I kind of remiss the fact that I didn't continue. And so I used a pandemic. Worked for a dog trainer in the Bay Area for some time, got my feet wet, and then transitioned into starting Canon Optima.
That's an incredible journey you went through there. Like I said, I'd never heard the whole story before. It's really interesting. I kind of did the same thing. I stepped away from my passion for a while and then came back to it. It's almost like that coming home feeling. It settles in and you're like, yeah, this is exactly what was missing from my life.
Actually, there's a lot of overlap with skill set. In my previous field, what made me proficient was speaking and teaching people and getting people excited about what I was talking about, like a very dry material, motivating them. And then the investigative front was very much problem solving. It was sifting through big data, building queries, trying to find people that are stealing, building PowerPoint presentations and presenting it to district attorneys to incite them to help us detain organized crime in the area. So it was a lot of people, it was a lot of speaking, it was a lot of problem solving. And so when I got into behavior work, I found very much behavior work is a problem solving business, like getting to the heart of what's going on, why is it happening before we can start getting to the solves.
So did you ever work with dogs for the Marines or just as kind of like that little side thing with the kennels?
I was a grunt. Yeah,
Okay.
I was actually, so I took the ASVAB and I scored off the charts with everything with the exception of mechanics. So they literally told me you could have any job in the Marine Corps with the exception of putting anything together or taking it apart, which stands to be true today when I put IKEA furniture together.
I think everyone feels that way.
So I got military intelligence. I got my top secret clearance. And then I happened to be taking a class on law enforcement. It was a college credit class. And I was talking to the teacher and they were like, most of our SLED task force are former infantry. And I was like, really? And at that moment, I was reading a book about the 5th Marine Raiders, an infantry unit, a famous infantry unit in the Marines. And Rambo Week came on. Yeah. And I called my military recruiter and I said, I want to change my MOS 2 weeks before boot camp. He's like, that's kind of dodgy. What do you want? I was like, infantry. And he's like, don't do that. And I'm like, yes, I want to do Rambo. Understand? And my brother flew in from Tennessee. He was airborne, and my family tried to convince me don't do it. And I said, I'm going to do it. And so I changed my MOS to infantry. So I was just a grunt.
Okay. Tell me the hardest thing about being in the military and your favorite thing about being in the military.
Oh, man, probably drinking religiously on the weekend and then waking up at 5 a.m. on Monday and running 8 miles.
No, thank you.
Yeah. And then the best thing is probably the people. Like the people that you meet, your brothers, it's like a family. And in that time in your life, you're looking for something. And the people that you meet, the people that you train with along the way, they become really close.
Do you still have friends that are in the military or out of it now as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Still keeping in contact. Our age demographic, they're only on Facebook. So I reach out to them on Facebook from time to time.
Facebook. It's like my least favorite platform of the social medias. But yes, there are so many people in that age group that are still on there. Tell me, now you've gotten married, you've moved in with your wife, and you have kids, right? You have a bunch of kids. And how did that change your life?
Man, so I married into 4 kids, and I'd always wanted kids. My late mother can attest to this. I very much always wanted kids. Wasn't in the cards for me fertility wise. So marrying into 4 kids was, I don't know. My grandfather married into 8 kids, and he was probably the greatest man that I've ever known. He worked day and night and put food on the table for 8 kids. And I always looked up to him. Marrying into 4 kids almost felt like full circle. I was really just honored to be a part of these kids' lives. And all my friends who had kids, I was always like, let me take your kids out. I was that uncle kind of friend that would take them to the playground and was just super invested because I definitely felt like that part was missing in my life. It was a little later. I was 38 at that point, something that I really wanted. So meeting Natalie and getting to be a part of the boys' life was everything to me. It was meeting these 4 personalities and they're all different, getting to know them and their interests. And it was a crash course in parenthood. It really was. And then the inevitable, they all turned into teenagers. So they went from sprightly, charismatic kids that want to play football and are joking to video games and girls and leave me alone, get out of my room. So it was short lived, to say the least. But at that time, my wife wanted to start a fertility process, something I had told would just not happen for me. And she actually started the process without my knowledge, went and like searched out a fertility doctor, like the literal world's leading fertility doctor named Dr. Turk, and called me and said, I've started this process. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, okay, this is the most amazing thing that you've ever done, but never do that again. And she started it because my mom was dying of cancer. So she wanted to give me a child. And craziest part is we started the fertility process. We did the impossible. We have a wonderful, wonderful toddler named Bo Debbie, but my mom held out until she was born. So yeah, my mom
I
died.
love that.
She died 3 weeks after she was born.
Oh my gosh, what an amazing story.
Yeah. So if Natalie hadn't jumped the gun, whatever led her to do that, it felt so crazy at the time. Like I was total whiplash, but if she hadn't have done it, then my mom never would have experienced that. So, and
What a
funny enough,
beautiful.
we're actually going to South Carolina in a week, and my dad gets to meet Bo Debbie for the first time. Yeah.
That's incredible. That's so wonderful.
Yeah. So that's just another example of just life completely altering. It goes beyond changing a career and being so happy with your career, feeling like you're truly yourself, but just everything that altered, from the family life that we have to having a baby girl and just the life that we live and the stuff that we do together. It's incredible how when someone sees you and you see them and it's who you're supposed to be with, that magically you just start living the life that you're supposed to live as well.
And that all brought you into this whole world of Canine Optima and really changing your life and her life for the better. And you guys have really built something incredible. You really have.
It's crazy.
What do you think was the hardest part about that?
Social media.
I agree with that.
Yeah, marketing yourself through social media, it's a gift and it's a curse. So it definitely helped me to compete against some huge pillars. Every big name that you could imagine in the dog training industry is in the Bay Area, from Michael Ellis to Denise Fenzi. So it helped me to establish the business a lot faster. But once you market yourself through social media, you're somewhat handcuffed to it. You've got to maintain that presence. I'd say that's probably the one most difficult thing.
Yeah, I agree. And it's so different even between platforms. I mean, you have a very large platform on TikTok, but not as large of a platform on Instagram. Do you find that it's the same people following you over on Instagram from TikTok, or do you think you have two totally different audiences?
Two totally different audiences. I actually was really dumb. I did not use Instagram. I was successful on TikTok. I stayed on TikTok. I never attempted Instagram. And then when I found out that TikTok was potentially going to go bye-bye, I went full court press and started becoming extremely active on Instagram. And I went from maybe 3,000 followers. So I think we're at like 53,000 followers in a short amount of time. In that time, I think I've built mostly dog trainers. I can tell by the comments that I get when I talk a little bit more in the dog training realm, the behavior realm, and in talking about the industry. That seems to do extremely well on Instagram. So I feel like there's a ton of dog trainers following on Instagram versus TikTok. It's been a long road of rescue efforts and family stuff and dog training stuff and skits and comedy. And so I think I've just got a hodgepodge of like so many different people that follow me for different reasons. And so definitely less diversified on Instagram.
I feel like that's what happens on Instagram. I feel like a lot of other trainers, and there's some dog parents that follow me, but I feel like it's other dog trainers and other people who are just looking for advice and a safe place to have conversations like this, because we're more than just dog trainers. There's so much more to us. That's fine. Like, that's the space that I'm trying to create, but I'm also trying to create that space for dog parents too. So it is really hard to find that balance because they do want you to niche down so hard on social media. It's really difficult. It's almost like you need like 7 different accounts to cover everything that you're just trying to cover with one job.
Yeah. Yeah. It causes a lot of confusion when you try to do different things. With TikTok, it's like a lottery system. If one of my rescue videos goes viral, then I grab onto the rescue crowd. If a comedy sketch goes viral, I grab onto a larger crowd. So my platform now feeds larger people. But with Instagram, it's not a lottery system. It's a slow burn. It's like an IV drip of success with the algorithms. You kind of have to stay narrow and build a more secular crowd. Otherwise, you're just going to cause confusion, or you're not going to be successful in tapping into all these different crowds just based on the way their algorithm promotes videos.
Yeah, it's funny because I do look at, your accounts over on TikTok versus your accounts on Instagram, and there is definitely a difference between the two. So you really have figured out how to speak to your audience. I personally love your comedy. That's what I show up for, is the skits and just the funny things that you do. You've really done a really good job curating your audience and making sure that you're providing what they want on each platform. That's really good, because I still struggle with that. I don't ever know what I'm doing. I just throw it up there and hope that it does all right. I also am not funny like you, so that I think hurts.
The humor is actually, it's kind of my therapy. I don't script things out. I don't think of like things to say. Whenever I do those scripts, it's literally just, I have a wild hair and I do it right there and I post it. And then in the past, I've had series go viral, like the Hi, I'm Your series went viral on TikTok. And it was the worst thing that's ever happened to me, because people kept asking me to do different dogs. And I was like, oh my God. And when I have such ADD that I can't, it's like, don't put me in a box. I can't do this. And so the 27 videos that I pumped out for that series was the worst experience ever, because my humor is very much just, I want to do this. I think this is funny. And I'll say it and then I'll move on. There's no editing or scripting that goes into it. I think most of my social media has been that. Whether you love it or hate it, I've never been one to be strategic in my social media. I've always just wanted to be myself. That way I didn't have to be anything other than myself. And I see a lot of dog trainers, when they put that persona out there and everything is very contrived and all the work goes into it, I feel for them, because you may like it now, even if you're successful and you're gaining a larger platform, but you've got to be that persona for a very long time. You have to show up like that. And in essence, you're almost like clocking in.
I have tried very hard to be very honest and very who I am. Kind of always been that way, though. I'm not very much I don't fit in with the popular kids kind of person. You know what I mean? I just have always done my own thing and been totally fine with it. I feel like that's what I try to do on social media. I try to be very honest about mental health and depression and just anxiety, things like that. I'm also legally disabled. So sharing those things with people and talking about, like you said earlier, about life, right? Life changes and you don't have to be this thing that society says, oh, you fit in this mold or you fit in this category. You don't have to be that. You can be whoever you want to be if you show up as whoever you want to be. And if you're flexible about it, people see that. That's my whole thing. Right? Show the journey, show the learning journey, show the process, show I'm in this with you guys. This isn't just you, it's me too. My dog Fitz, he's a reactive guy. I don't just teach people how to do it. I live it. I live it with you guys. I'm here with you. I have the same setbacks. I have the same fears. I have the same anxieties. I cry at 2:00 in the morning because we had a bad day. And I think that that's really important, to be transparent and honest, because there is so much showboating going on out there, and there has been so much. You've been a part of it. Jerry, Denise, everybody's kind of been a part of the dog trainer attacks and dog trainer wars that have been happening. And it's just been really kind of disheartening to me, because we should be finding ways to work together and lift each other up instead of tearing each other down and setting off our mobs of people on each other. It's just, to me, has just been the most crazy thing to watch. Just like, I have no idea what's happening most of the time, because I am just so shocked that people can be so mean to each other and not know anything about each other. It's wild to me. So it's been really cool to see the group of people kind of in the middle stick up for each other, stand up for each other, become friends because of it, and really just create this whole group of safety for other trainers. Because online bullying is a thing that is really upsetting. That's something that I've experienced personally. I've obviously watched several other people experience. And so to know that there are other people that are willing to support, laugh about it, but still be like, hey, I got you on this, has just been really, really neat to watch. But it is just sad that some of these people with larger platforms can come in and just say these awful things about people and potentially ruin their careers and not even care about it. It's been really upsetting.
Think when social media is your income, when your mortgage is paid off the backs of successful videos and you're basically making an income from your social media, the monetization, whether it be YouTube or whatever, that's where things get really murky. You're saying things for effect, you're dreaming up scandals, you're trying to position things in a way that it's going to make as much noise as possible. And to your point, when you bring in other people's livelihood, when you bring in other people's family, even, it's scary. You have to be very careful with what you say on social media because everybody's listening and you don't know who is listening. Can't tell you how many death threats I've had on a every other month basis because when somebody says something about a person and people go, yeah, millions upon millions of people are listening to what you say. There's some crazies in there. So you have to be very careful. You have to be mindful of the fact that if you don't control what you say, you have less of a chance to control what people do based on what you say. And so I think that's a hard lesson that I've learned over the years. I've certainly cleaned up. I think when I first came on the scene, I took social media really seriously. I was wearing wigs and doing skits and talking trash about everybody. And then I think everybody sort of learns to mature through social media. You get over that like immature, I'm making a lot of noise and everybody's paying attention and my account's growing. You make mistakes, you bump your head, and you learn to grow up. And then, yeah, even though you've grown up years later, you're still watching the same thing, this cyclical cycle of people coming in and doing the same thing that you did over and over and over. And it's just never going to end, unfortunately.
No. And I think that to your point there about like the death threats, there are some really extreme things that happen online. And it is unfortunate that people think that they need to go that far because bullying is bad enough, but that's like next level. But you threaten somebody's livelihood, that's bad. But you threaten their life, that's a little too far for me. I don't understand where this whole judge and jury thing came from with social media. They just are like, we see you as not within the community guidelines of what we believe. And so you're done. We're going to ruin you. And now we're going to threaten your life on top of it. That's too far. There should definitely be, I feel like, a little bit more policing on social media than there is, especially for social media platforms that say they're anti-bullying. And then you report somebody for bullying and they don't do anything, or they tell you that it's not bullying. I think their parameters are too thin. And it's really unfortunate because now we're not helping dogs and we're not helping people on top of it. It's really getting kind of out of control, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I think the only good thing to come from some semblance of unity was probably the Zach George debacle. I think as much as Zach tried to make noise and tried to get his crowd very riled up and hate this person, now hate this person, now hate this person, and now hate this organization, hate this organization. I think that what I saw was that the dog training industry united. The first time I saw him going after real dog trainers and I stepped in to defend them, I saw more people doing more of that. And that led to obviously the chat where industry dog trainers tried to get together and talk about what are our differences, what can we agree on. And I think there was a lot of good dialogue to come from that. So I think he had a complete counterintuitive effect. Now people like, Jacob from Yorkshire, I'm good friends with Joe Rosie, who's incredible. The fact that I can call her and ask her for help with the case study that I've got going on. Denise, dog trainers that care about the industry and care about putting out good information and care about supporting each other and not just laying waste to them because of the choices that they make in terms of tools or no tools. I think we drew a hard line in the sand on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And so for that, I think he's done a lot of good unintentionally.
Yeah, unintentionally, for sure. It's still happening, unfortunately. He's still on his plight or whatever. But I do think that you are right. It's kind of pushed us all together away from the negative, which is great. But I know that a few people are still kind of suffering under the weight of that, which is unfortunate. But as soon as he moves on from that, it's going to be somebody else. And so I think as long as we continue to show up and say, hey, come over here, this whole group of people over here understands what you're going through and we will support you. It makes it a lot easier for those who are going through it now versus those who had to go through it in the initial phases of it, because I would think it was pretty rough for the people initially because you didn't feel like you had any support. So it's good to know that there are groups of people out there now that are supporting each other. And Joe Rosie, Jacob, Denise, Jerry, all of those people are phenomenal people and they're so intelligent. And it's really incredible, I think, to learn from lots of different people because dog training is so individualized, right? Dogs are unique individuals just like humans. And in order to have a correct plan of attack for training, the best thing you can do is pull from multiple sources to fit those pieces for each individual dog. It's super important to learn from multiple people. And that's why I enjoy learning from you. I like listening to your podcast because it's more fact-based, science-based than mine is. And I learn a lot from you. Every time you guys drop episodes, I'm like, yes, this is so exciting because I always learn something. And there's several episodes that I go back to because I just like to hear the stories. Like Denise Fenzi, I've become friends with her as well. I just love her. But listening to that episode where you really kind of dive in with her and get her background story, it's just really neat to hear those things about people. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with you today because you always do that for other people. You always give space and room for other people, but I haven't seen anybody do it for you yet. So here we are. We're doing it for you. So tell everybody a little bit about your training methods, your training programs, and what you guys offer.
We are mostly behavior work. For significant portions of the year, we'll actually remove the obedience services because we're inundated with so much behavior that it's hard to get to everybody. So we have to stay nimble. So essentially, it's mostly just behavior. And that kind of spawned from my social media and putting a lot of work up. And I got right, wrong, or indifferent inundated very early on with behavior before I knew what I was doing, and worked really hard to try to catch up so that I could support the dogs. And obviously in the beginning, I refused to do leash corrections or anything like that because of the company that I work for and some of the heinous things that I saw. I just refused to do that. And so I decided I'm not going to perform a single solitary leash correction. And that also put me in a very precarious spot, being inundated with some reactive dogs and trying to figure out how to woo-saw them without effective handling. But that also led to some creativity in what else can I do. And it also led me to looking into the bigger picture around science and not just some of the stuff that people really get excited about, like peer-reviewed studies, which I couldn't read to save my life. I just focused on like big picture science, like what's going on in the brain, what's going on in the body, what's actually happening to the dog, what are the chemical changes, right? What does genetics have to say? And that kind of led me down the road to meeting a lot of the podcast guests that I featured, like Kim Brophy, who totally peeled my scout back. Joe Rosie, who I took her canine science course for a year and a half, and that completely changed everything for me as well. And so I tried to use science as a means of perspective and also patience in understanding what the dog is dealing with. And so I just started working a ton of reactivity. I developed a assessment process where I use 5 different helper dogs. They all do different things. They're meant to, by process of elimination, bring out certain types of reactivity in the dog so that before we start working on the game plans, we know this is the driver. This is why your dog is doing it. And then that gives us the acute game plan to work more efficiently and successfully with the dog. And so almost 5 years later, we've worked close to 7,000, probably more than 7,000 dogs. I've got an online community where I'm actively posting my case studies as well as webinars. So we're probably approaching 200 case studies posted on the community and more than 100 webinars just breaking down what I'm doing, which has always been a really cool thing to kind of flesh out. This is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. Here are the mistakes that I made. Watch this. And so it's been a really cool thing to have a community that's a part of my journey and just a part of me learning and getting better and making mistakes and overcoming those mistakes, which led as of a year and a half ago to me starting a book, which I never thought I would do. We're in the final stages of a book. It's going to copy edit in a week, and then it will go to formatter, and then we're going to self-publish a book called The Infinite Approach, Polyvagal Insights in Modern Dog Training, which is essentially just everything that I know around reactivity and why it happens and all the different game plans that we deploy. So really unfortunately, that's why the podcast took a hiatus for the last year, because I've been really focusing on trying to finish this book. And so with any luck, we'll have it out soon. And then I can get back to talking to trainers because I really, really, really love the podcast. I love talking to trainers just like this and just having conversations and getting to know people. So that's been a big regret of mine that we put it on ice, but hopefully in the next 3 or 4 months, I can get back to it and be done with the book.
That's exciting. I didn't know you were writing a book. I'm really excited about that. I can't wait to read it. I think that that's incredible. That's one of my favorite things to do is read the books and learn from other people. Kim Brophy was a big light bulb, a lot of light bulbs for me too. I loved her course. Also took Michael Shikashio's aggressive dog course, and a lot of light bulb moments there too. It's so wild how much stuff is out there that really applies to our dogs that we don't even realize is out there. Kim Brophy's Meet Your Dog book, that was just such an incredible journey for me to read that book and make so many connections, be able to go, oh, yeah, yep, well, totally understand that now, and just really kind of look back at things in my life with dogs that happened and be able to see things a little bit more clearly. I remember in one of your podcast episodes, you said something about how your old job, where you were doing criminal investigations, related really well to dog training because of how well you could see the dilated pupil, or you could tell that someone was lying because of the way that they moved their body, or an eye twitch or something happened. And that really, to me, was a very pivotal moment, because I was like, we are just as telling in our facial expressions as dogs are. And if we just paid a little bit more attention, or taught people how to pay attention, it would be so much easier for the dogs, because the dog sees us turn our head, look sideways at the doorway, or even or to raise our hand or something. A dog knows what's going to happen next, because they've gotten into that pattern of seeing those things from us. If we spent half as much time paying attention to our dogs as they spent paying attention to us, it would be game changer for so many people. So many people.
Yeah, I used to interrogate people for a living, and that led to advanced certifications. And that's actually where I first ran across the autonomic nervous system and signs of deception, signs of stress. And so it became very natural when I got into dog training to research the same thing. And that more or less led to me allowing dogs to go over in my session, although I created a lot of backlash when I first started doing it. The force free community lit torches and he's flooding dogs, he's flooding dogs. And for me, it was, I need to see what the dog is doing. What's the body language? Can the dog regulate? Is it out of control and super dynamic, like they're letting off steam? Or is it pinpointed? Is there a focal point? Is it more pursuit driven? And I've maintained that process for my entire journey. And it's helped me understand what I'm doing. The craziest thing in the dog training world is there are a lot of dog trainers out there that work dogs for a living, fix dogs for a living, and they've never really taken the opportunity to thoroughly assess the dog to determine if this protocol or this effective handling or this technique is really what the dog needs. I've listened to dog trainers time and time again on podcasts say, I don't need to see it to fix it. And I just feel like that's so counterintuitive. And the fact that it's taboo to allow a dog to go over in a safe, controlled fashion in your assessment is strange to me. And it just doesn't feel like it's a fight that I need to fight. I feel like most people should really, if you're taking this seriously and behavior work's really important to you, you have to know what it is. You have to see the dog. You have to understand what's going on with the dog to really get a sense for, all right, based on what I'm seeing, here is what's going on. Here is why it's happening. And then and only then can you take your first step to creating a game plan for the dog.
I agree with you. I always tell my clients, if you catch it, videotape it and send it to me, because that is going to show me what the buildup was. That's going to show me why the redirect happened. That's going to show me what happened after that and how long did it stress your dog out afterwards. And all of those little things are so important. And for us to not talk about those things, or for it to be taboo, for us to, I want to say capitalize, but that's really what we're doing, is we're capitalizing on those behaviors so that we can say, okay, now we have a list. We know exactly what's going to happen. We know why it happened, and we know how to prevent it now. And some dogs can spin right out of situations like that and be fine afterwards. And then other dogs don't. And if you don't know what happens afterwards, how do you prepare for that? You can't. So I find your approach really interesting. And like I said, I've learned so much from you. One of my goals is to start being in your community and watching your webinars and all of that stuff, because I think that it's so important to look through other people's eyes. And I don't think that you can fully understand what dogs are doing unless you're willing to kind of look through their eyes and take a look at how they're thinking. And I think a lot of people try to repress so much of what their dogs are doing, or control so much of what their dogs are doing, that they don't think about the why. They just think about, this is what I want and this is how it's going to be. And so now we have this like tight knit little compartment that the dog's ability and mind and thoughts and everything has to stay in, but they don't think about the bigger picture and what that could potentially lead them to. It's really important to break it down. And I think that you advocating for the dog's mental space is super important because we obviously don't want them to top off all the time, but knowing what that looks like is a huge step in prevention, in my opinion. So I fully agree with you on that.
Yeah, if you don't know the problem, you can't successfully set them up for success with the solution. Like, if you got a dog that, you haven't determined that they're sound sensitive, they've got, some real anxiety issues. If you haven't figured that out, then how can you possibly safeguard them in the future, put them in the right environments to start the therapeutic process? Right? To me, it's always been about understanding it, wanting to understand it. That's been my whole journey. And building this like qualitative database in my brain around like these are the things that dogs do and this is what's different and this is what's the same has helped me to understand what I'm doing. And now it's gotten to the place where I'm just so obsessed with it. When I get a weird dog that does something weird, my brain immediately is like, what is that? It just immediately knows you've never seen this before. And I get so excited. Like, this is different. Why is this different? And it very much goes back to a lot of stuff that I did with investigations and big data and whatnot, just problem solving. And I think what makes a really passionate dog trainer is, one, you got to have a passion for dogs, of course. And I think we all do. But two, you got to have a passion for problem solving that really is going to propel you to understand the dog. We always talk about meeting the dog or training the dog in front of you, but really understanding the dog in front of you, getting to know them holistically, not just their hangups or their stressors or their triggers, but like everything, like what makes them tick. And then after what makes them tick, what makes them tick, tick, boom. Like that in essence is what should get you excited about behavior.
Curiosity is a huge part of it. If you can't ask the questions, you're not going to get anywhere with it. If you're not ready to dig in deep and go the next level, you're just not going to get very far. So with that being said, what do you think was your hardest won victory with a difficult dog?
It's hard to say hardest one. There's been a lot of dogs that have helped me, that have had me question things. There have been the dogs that were learning moments for me, the dogs that I wasn't ready for, the dogs that had severe neurological disorders, the dogs that pushed me to reach out to people and ask questions, to gain partnerships, to start working with vet behaviorists in tandem so that I can better understand what I'm seeing. There hasn't been a difficult dog per se. Well, I'll tell you what, actually a difficult dog, not probably in the light that you're talking about, but some of the dogs that I still think about today. I had someone call me like 3 years ago in a panic because her bulldog had bit her husband for the seventh time. And they were thinking about, they were going to put the dog down. And I told them, have you seen a trainer before? And she said, no. And I said, well, we owe at least an assessment before you do that. So bring the dog in. So we did an emergency assessment. I was working the dog and saw that the dog was super driven for food. And I started, stimulating the dog to see if they had a stimulation issue that maybe they would go over while the food was present. Just that classic, like I lose control about, food and stimulation. And I found that the dog was incredibly in control, no matter how hard I tried to stimulate the dog, like tons of focus. I could calm the dog. I could cap the dog. I could crank the dog. It was beautiful. And which is kind of a rarity with some of the bully breeds too. They typically have a problem keeping the lights on when they become stimulated. And so when I brought the dog out, he definitely went Cujo and, showed all the signs that he's shown some of the dogs and the husband in the home, forward aggression. But I was able to just throw a lure right in front of his face and just lure him into a sit. And as soon as I brought food into the equation, he was like, yes. And he had such food drive that it just changed his priorities instantaneously, and he could listen and he could calm for the food. And it was so rare compared to a lot of the dogs that I work in that exact circumstance. He just had a gift of being able to pump the brakes and listen and calm, and you could get a message in. And so I was telling him, you're going to be okay. Like, this dog is going to be okay. There's totally a roadmap here. Express to them that we can absolutely fix this. And I reached out to them the next day to see if they wanted to get started. And they said that they had, unbeknownst to me, they had already scheduled the euthanasia. And so he was euthanized that next day. And in my mind, it taught me that I needed to slow down and make sure that I'm delivering a message in a way that lands with the owners. Not just saying we've got a path here, but just making sure that I'm having an open dialogue and that I'm fielding, more in the moment conversation with them about where's your head at? Where are you going to take things? How can I help? I feel like if I had done a better job of that he probably wouldn't have been euthanized, that my failure in that session was not slowing down and make sure that I was a part of their thought process and making sure that we could turn the ship right then and there before they made that decision. So there's been like lots of those scenarios where I've learned big lessons. For me, those are the most difficult ones when a dog walks in that you haven't seen that yet. One of the biggest things about dog training is your capacity. It comes down to the dogs you've met and what you've done in the past. That's what builds your capability. And so when you meet new challenges and new issues that you haven't met before, like those are the hard moments where you don't have all the answers. You're quiet. You're not just speaking out of the side of your mouth with the owner and kind of working the dog. Like you're asking yourself more questions than you're asking them. And so those are always the moments where I thrive. I realize I'm learning, but when the dog is in a hard place or the dog is up against euthanasia or potentially being surrendered or rehomed, it adds a completely different component to it. And so that is why I have gained so many different friends in the industry that in those moments where I go, I don't think I have all the answers here. Let's call, let's make a phone call, let's reach out. And I've literally in the middle of a session called Joe Rosie, FaceTimed her on IG and went, this is what I'm seeing. What do you think? And Joe Rosie with her experience is like, this is what it is. Sighthounds do this. And so that has been one of the most special things about my career is that now I can call dog trainers and ask them, hey, this is what I'm seeing. And because all my sessions are recorded, I can send them a session to them. Be like, what do you see? And that's been such a cool thing to learn through people that know so much and also feel like you're not alone. It's not just between you, the dog, and euthanasia that you've got a lifeline yourself. Because if you don't have a lifeline, the dog doesn't have one in those particular scenarios.
That's really awesome. I love that you're open to talking about that and saying that you don't have all the answers, because I feel like sometimes, unfortunately, that's where a lot of the training industry is. They get so focused on, I have all the answers, I can fix your problem. And I'm just like, nope, let me send you to somebody else because I don't specialize in this. I've got names for you. I can help you move on in a different direction with somebody that has maybe a little bit better understanding and experience with this. I think that that's really important to know what our limits are. I actually told Michael Shikashio that I don't think that I'll be specializing in aggressive dogs. I have past trauma with aggressive dogs. I lost a dog because she was aggressive, had to behaviorally euthanize her. And so now every time I get one that's a little spicy, I'm like, ugh, hard breaks, you got to go to somebody else. And I love knowing that I have multiple people that I can send them to, because not everybody's going to be the right fit for everybody. And so having that variety of people to refer to is really, really important, and not having that big ego where I'm just like, no, you must stay with me. I think it's so important, because you're not benefiting yourself, the dog, or the people if you're not actually trying to help them in the way that is effective for them. Behavioral euthanasia. Let's chat about this for a minute. That's another taboo topic for us to talk about today. Being a vet tech, being a dog trainer, I've seen both sides of that spectrum, right? I understand where people are when they come in for those situations, but as a trainer, I see where we could maybe work on things. And it is my personal belief that the gap between the two is very narrow. You can save them or you can't. And there are just some dogs that are just unfortunately not meant for this world. And we're going to run into them, but we have to be honest when we run into them. But there are a lot of dogs that we can do a lot of things for. And sometimes maybe with the correct training and the proper rehabilitation, they can stay in the home, or maybe rehoming them to a better situation is an option. Unfortunately, with the shelter crisis and everything that's happening, that's just unfortunately not an option the way that it was previously. So tell me about your stance on behavioral euthanasia.
It's a probability. It's a numbers game. It's a formula. When you're talking to somebody and you're doing the intake and you hear their circumstance and you hear what they're up against and you go to assess the dog and you're determining this is probably what the game plan is going to look like. This is probably how long it's going to take. This is the emphasis it's going to take. This is the likelihood of a bite in those time frames. What's the family's ability to keep themselves safe while we're trying to work through this game plan? Sometimes the conditions are right. I've taken dogs that have killed dogs and we've rehabilitated them and they've been rehomed. And I get videos of the dog frolicking on a beach in Oregon. You hear these things at face value and you think, oh, these are terrible things. This dog has bitten a child in the face. This dog attacked a small daughter because a jar of spaghetti shattered in the garage and they try to stop the dog from walking on it. All of these dogs have stories. They're typically really intense scenarios, but when you're talking about the dog's options, it does come down to your ability to keep the family safe and the viability of your training plan being able to right size that dog's issues. When I have the uh-oh in the back of my mind when I'm working a dog, it typically comes down to an inability to regulate. And where that might be a dog that has generalized anxiety that's not trying to hurt anybody but can't regulate and is just shivering in the corner and turning into a dog skin rug. On the antithesis of that, on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have the dogs that can't regulate, that are forward aggressive, that will bite at the drop of a hat. That's where things can get very precarious. So as you start to slide the pendulum that direction and you realize like we're in trouble, like you've got a real problem here, I have real concerns about you being able to maintain a safe home, that's where you're starting to weigh all the options. Is there viability for rehoming? Probably not. This dog would have to live with the trainer for a very long time. Is there viability for a sanctuary? Maybe some of the sanctuaries in the area that do take on some pretty extreme dogs, or is behavioral euthanasia an option? And so your job is to factor everything in and talk through the options and empower the owners with the best decision. You can't make that decision for them. Your job is to say, here is what your dog's issues are. This is the concerns I have. This is what the safety management protocol looks like. This has to be ironclad. This is your fallback safety management protocol. And then this is what our process looks like. And through those conversations, the owners will typically come to terms with what's best for them. But oftentimes in these conversations, they've come off the heel of something really devastating, like a horrendous attack where a child needed reconstructive surgery. And that just adds so much intensity to it, where they come to you with, I'm at the end of my rope, either fix it now or, we're not going to move forward. And as you know, typically in some cases, it's not necessarily that the dog is so extreme. In some cases, it's that we waited too long. We've had issues and the issues have led to a complete boil over and something terrible happened. And now the dog cannot be in that home environment. And now the dog has rehearsed something incredibly unfortunate. And it can feel really devastating to the family. And it's a tough topic, but it does come down to probability. Here's the likelihood of success, and here is the likelihood of a reoccurrence in the process as well.
Do you think if people felt more comfortable talking about the struggles they're having with their dogs, that we would catch some of these scenarios before it was too late?
I think people don't quite understand when a dog is presenting true aggression, like purpose. I'm trying to bite the thing. I'm trying to get at the thing. And there's no wasted energy. There's no solar flare, like dog going crazy and bellowing everywhere. The dog is trying to get after a person or a thing. I think they don't quite understand the severity of that situation, whether it be a larger dog that has the capacity to really hurt something or kill something, or a dog that's bred to, clamp and dispatch. They can cause real damage. I think oftentimes people don't see the tragedy coming and they try to manage it as best they can. They lock their dog away because they feel like the dog is unsafe, but they aren't realizing that in the best case scenario, when you're trying to lock that dog away, it's not an if, it's a when that management fails, when that dog blows past a door, gets out of, hops over a baby gate or slips a collar. And so really, I think it comes down to making sure that we're seeing professionals sooner. And it also comes down to where people waste a lot of money and a lot of time with a professional that isn't quite at the level to work those extreme cases, where a lot of my clients, I'm like the third or fourth trainer, and how wonderful that they have the resources and the finances and the time to invest in that many trainers that just threw noodles at the refrigerator and hope they stuck. That also plays a big problem in the whole scheme of things.
I definitely think that that's a problem, because that's the same thing that happens to me. And I'm not big behavior like you are. I'm minor modification stuff. And still, people come to me and I'm the second, third, fourth, fifth trainer that they've seen. And I've been through that. I've been through the situation where I've been through 2 or 3 trainers before I finally landed on one that helped me. And it's hard because it was time in between. So then you can't fix the problem because you had to save for a year and a half before you could go to the next trainer. And I think that resources are a huge problem when it comes to that kind of stuff, which is why I fully believe that some of the stuff that's available online that gets misused and is maybe not necessarily 100% right when it comes to helping people fix their problems becomes such a crutch for people, is because it's free and it's available and it's helping, but it's also just kind of putting a band-aid over the damage. It's not really doing anything.
I think social media has made it even worse. I think before social media, when you had something terrible happen, you Googled and you found the people that were most active around you, right, wrong, or indifferent, whatever their skill sets were, whatever their approaches were. Maybe they were doing hand of God. Maybe they, were doing something else, but they had the experience. They had the 300 Yelp reviews and 500 Google reviews, and they had a lot of dogs. And you have a better chance with somebody who's touched a lot of dogs. And nowadays, you just showcase yourself with an out of control dog on social media, and you blow up and you cut ahead of the line. And now people see you on social media, and you've got no clients under your belt. You've not done any certifications, you don't have the experience, and people are bringing their out of control aggressive dog to that person. And then they're showcasing that out of control dog to continue to perpetuate their own marketing. I'm guilty of it. When I first started, I showed a lot of out of control dogs. I couldn't calm the dog down. The reason that my videos were so successful, the first 100,000 followers on TikTok, is because all the dogs were reactive and I was doing all the wrong things and they were snapping at me and going nuts at me. And that made my social media blow up. It was not being able to do it correctly that helped me to ascend to a successful business. That's the unfortunate thing about social media. Whereas nowadays, you're hard pressed to see a dog do anything in my session because I know how to okay, let's keep this dog. I know what not to do. Let's keep you under control. And so now my social media is boring as shit, and I'm not followers at all. But it's a symptom of I've done all the wrong things. I've made all the mistakes. I've almost been bitten all the times because of all those mistakes. I've wasted so many sessions doing the wrong things. And now I know some things and I can do some things, but it's not good for social media. And you won't gain any followership from mindful, strategic approach in the session.
So that's the unfortunate dark side of it all. But it is true. And that's the kind of the disgusting part about it. People want to see the bad stuff happening. They don't want to see the good stuff happening. They want to see the bad stuff happening, which is why things like dog fights and chicken fights and things like that still happen, because people want to witness those terrible things. And it's heartbreaking that humanity is like that. I have a quick question for you before I ask you one more question, and then we'll wrap up. But do you have any certifications? This is something I don't know about you.
No, I took
Me either, so I'm not judging.
No, when I started animal behavior college and when they sent me those black and white binders, this thick, I was like, what the hell is this? And literally sent it back and said, give me my money back. And they ended up giving me half my money because it was just such a, are you fucking kidding me? And so that kind of turned me off to throwing $8,000 at something that was just introductory and read from a black and white binder. So I did pick and choose the webinars that I felt were interesting. I did attend all the conferences. I always got it remotely and always watched all the videos. I'd say that I've probably seen hundreds upon hundreds of webinars. And then I did enroll in Joe Rosie, Nando, and Dean's Canine Science Online, which was supposed to be a canine science certification. It's since disbanded, but they finished, I want to say, a year and a half worth of it. They were rolling it out for a 3-year cycle to achieve the certification. And it was gnarly. It was no joke. They were not messing around. Joe Rosie was putting curriculums together and giving homework. For a year and a half, I was working at it. And the cool part about that particular format, although you didn't receive a certification at the end because they disbanded, everything was based on peer-reviewed studies to the extent that you would take a curriculum and Joe Rosie would throw 15 peer-reviewed studies at you and be like, these are what the studies say. This is what's accomplished. These are the studies that have revoked this. It was one of the most intense things I've ever experienced in my life, but it definitely helped me to root myself more in what does science actually have to say, what works, what doesn't work. But no formal certifications. At this point, most of the certifications, if not all the certifications, are all introductory. It's 3 months of reading stuff, regurgitating stuff. Nothing is based off of qualifying that you have touched these dogs and you can do these things. Most of it, at most, is logging that you've done 300 hours and having a vet sign off on that, something to that extent. So it wouldn't really benefit me to do the certifications now, but I absolutely believe in them, especially as we talked about with the social media stuff, that you just have to at least know that they've cracked open a book and that there's some bigger picture framework involved. And so I absolutely encourage owners to search out people that have gotten their certification so that at least we know they're dealing with some inkling of understanding and learning theory and science and ethology, something, just because a lot of people just sort of start out and it's a lot of trial and error and they're failing a lot of dogs as they learn to become a better dog trainer. And I just don't want any clients to get caught up in that and waste a lot of money, especially with really intense circumstances where they're dealing with a really out of control dog. So for sure, the PSA is find somebody that has some certifications for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have certifications either, but I'm very much like you. I continue to take the continuing education courses and really look for things that I feel like I'm lacking in or I need to learn about. Jerry told me last year that I needed to stop and take a break because I had taken like 32 continuing credit. And she was like, you need to stop. You've taken more than anybody I know this year. So just stop, take a 4-month break, and then you can take some more classes. She said, you need to just let it sit in. And she's right. You do need to let it sit in and go over it again and apply it and all the things. But when you constantly have your hands on dogs, it's kind of like, I have a question and then now all of a sudden I've looked up a course that can answer that question. Now I'm taking that course. So because I'm very curious and I'm very hands-on and I like to learn things so that I can apply them. And that's kind of, what led me down this road because I want to help people so badly. I want to help dogs so badly. And I agree. I think the certifications are important, but I also feel like there's a range of us that have been doing it for so long before the certifications really became a necessary thing that for us to get it now is kind of counterproductive. But I do think that the new people in the industry should be working towards certifications just to help identify that they have opened a book because it is important. And then the other thing I was going to ask you for is 3 red flags for a trainer. If you're on the internet, especially social media, and you're looking for a trainer, what are 3 things if you see, you would say absolutely not?
If they are 100% confident, they are, saying everything with their chest and everything is a broad brush and everything is a black and white statement, stay away. I encourage people to look for client reviews, as we talked about in, the middle of the podcast. Like anybody can say they're anything and they can make things look like anything. But I found a lot of value in using ChatGPT to look for people's client reviews. You can actually just say, ChatGPT, find so-and-so's Yelp and Google reviews, and they will just pull it for you. And you'd be surprised at the amount of people that are on social media that have like 2 reviews and their business has not been solidified yet. They don't yet have the experience. And so you have to make sure that you're working with somebody who has experience because that's what helps us with our capabilities at the end of the day. And then if you're talking to a dog trainer, ask what will they do? If you're calling up a dog trainer and trying to figure out if it's a good fit and you give them here's what my dog is doing. What do you think? What are some things that you might deploy? Have them say what they're going to do and then say, no, what if that doesn't work? And if they can't answer that, then that might be a red flag as well. But it's really important to qualify who you're going to entrust your dog's safety to. Especially considering that whatever they do to that dog could have really significant consequences and could create more issues versus solutions.
That's excellent advice. I like that last little, and what if that doesn't work? That's a really good one because sometimes they can give a paper cut. This is the answer. I read it off my sheet and now you have your answer. And what? If you don't have some kind of backup plan, that's not a great way to go. Well, Josh, it was amazing chatting with you today. And I look forward to seeing what we can do together in the future and watching you and your business grow along with your little family. What would you like to leave the listeners with today?
I guess be the most fun your dog has in a day. Don't worry about the how to do thing. Don't go out and purchase the subscription services and don't endlessly research all the YouTube videos. Just be your dog's favorite thing to happen that day. Be one of the other reasons that your dog's heart rate went through the roof and respiratory system went through the roof. And just have a fucking blast with your dog and have a little drink before you do as well. Don't do it sober. Just maybe a little bit of bourbon or maybe a glass of wine and a flirt pole and a tennis ball. But if you can have a lot of fun with your dog, you'd be surprised at the the difference that makes in whatever you're trying to accomplish.
That's an excellent message. So remember, as always, guys, be kind, love your dogs, and be the best part of the day. And we will see you guys next week on Straight Up Dog Talk. Thank you for listening to Straight Up Dog Talk. If your dog is bouncing off the walls no matter how much you walk them, it can feel like nothing is ever enough. The truth is, most dogs don't need more exercise. They need the right kind of enrichment to settle their brains and their bodies. That's why I put together a free enrichment resource packed with easy, fun ideas that you can try right away. The link is in the show notes. And remember, new episodes drop every Monday and Wednesday. I'll see you next time.